Another founder wisdom pod today with Peter C. Fuller. He is the founder at Catipult.ai. We're going to talk about a bunch of things, CEO stuff, KPIs, leadership, entrepreneurship, personal wellness, and AI. Peter, welcome to the pod. Glad to have you. Can you briefly introduce yourself?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on, Charles. I love doing this. So, yeah, I'm a founder of Catipult.ai, and before that, I was an entrepreneur. Still am, obviously, and a business coach, and that's what brought me to creating this company, Catapult.
All right. Tell us about your background because to become a business coach, one needs to live a lot of experiences. You have a colorful career, to say the least. You founded stuff quite early in your career as well, in Mountain View itself, in Silicon Valley. So tell us about the career that you had and the insights that you gained from it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was, it's a fun career. I was up in Silicon Valley for quite a while. We created several different companies. Some of them were busts. I think you learn some of your best lessons from the, things that people would consider failures, right? But they're successes in another way. You just learn a lot. And then we had some successes too. We've been in all sorts of different industries from anti-spam back in the day when that was a big issue. And we were just talking about Google spam filters a moment ago, which we both hate. And then one of the fun ones was Hook Mobile, which was a company that created the first digital trading card. And so we had deals with all sorts of companies like Atlantic Records, T.I. King. We were doing his stuff, and it really was the first trading card that had a digital asset value attached to it, $10,000. So we like to say that was the first NFT we created, and it was way ahead of its time. So that company sold that, and I got $256.32 for that one. So after the investors took theirs. So sometimes it's good to be ahead of the curve, sometimes not so much. So yeah.
A grocery bill.
Yeah, grocery bill, exactly. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, they all led to creating Catapult because we had lots of experiences with business owners. And then when I jumped out of my other company, Scale Computing, which was data storage and hyperconvergence, and to become a business coach, realized, wow, there's a lot of people who had the same problems I had, and yet there wasn't a great avenue for CEOs to focus, right? A lot of software out there, a lot of processes out there that really are too complicated. Not that a CEO can't handle complication, they can, but we need things much more simplified so that we can really run the business well and not be in the weeds. And so that's what Catapult
Right.
is.
So what would be the main three lessons you tell your entrepreneurship students, because you're at Purdue University, you're an adjunct professor there?
That's right.
What
Yeah.
would you tell them?
Well, I always started my first class by saying, we're going to make sure that no one says the F word. And the F word isn't the one
Failure.
you're thinking about. It's failure. Exactly. So they were free to say anything else, free speech, right? But not failure. So we had, because you have to, when you get to be a startup, when you get into it, you have to redefine the word failure because there isn't any failure, right? It's simply all learning experiences, creating a light bulb, 1,200 ways not to do it, right? That's his perspective. And so that's the first thing, right? Is don't worry about it. There's not failures. The second thing is prepare yourself for things not working out as planned, right? Often my friend in Silicon Valley had a girlfriend, and I use past tense. She drove her around all the homes in Woodside, which is the ritzy area of Silicon Valley where Steve Jobs lived and everything. And he said, you know what? One day I'm going to have a house this big, but I'm going to probably fail 4 times and go bankrupt on the way there.
Back and
Next
forth,
week.
right? Like
Exactly.
back from mansion to the apartment.
Exactly. Next week she broke up with him. She said, I can't do it. So just keep trying, and succeeding. And the third thing is there really isn't any bad ideas, right? So if you come to business with those ideas, with those 3 steps in mind, you're going to have a much better mindset to get into it, right? There are ideas that may not work as well as others, but it's better to not put that judgment on yourself, right? Just come up with as many ideas as you can. So
Yeah, fail forward is very much accurate, and failure makes you stronger. these cheesy dictums like what doesn't kill you make you stronger. It's true, it's cells adapting. If you want to look at it from a scientific level, when you break a muscle in the gym, it comes back stronger because it had some kind of trauma. Well, guess what? It's the same in the brain. It's the same in neurons. It's not the exact same scientific reaction, but you learn from these defeats. And people think they get into entrepreneurship for richness, like that's what got me started, 50 Cent rapping about Lambos and women. But what has you staying in entrepreneurship is the learning and you just becoming a better character every day, sculpting your ideal self, becoming more patient, becoming better, becoming smarter, becoming more empathetic. So I think that's why a bunch of us stay in the game. And yes, if you're patient enough, you will have that exit, that Steve Jobs exit. But not all of us will make it there. That's also another reality.
Yeah. Well, and we folk, I actually in my past came close to bankruptcy, had the papers filed, right? And it's devastating when you go through that fire. Luckily, didn't actually do it, but had to settle with creditors and went through that entire process, which is
Same
absolutely
here.
gut wrenching. Yeah, yeah, and it makes us stronger, right? Because now we can empathize with other CEOs, like we know that burden that they carry, which is very important, because it is like you're saying, it does make you stronger. It's so painful. You don't want to ever go through it again because you don't think you're ever going to end up there in the first place.
Right. But when you like invite these experiences in your life and you truly stay in the present, and me, what helped me is the stoic mindset, I guess, in those situations, like what can I do today and not focus on the negative. You live enough of these experiences and you really understand that in the end you're bulletproof and that pain is only temporary. I do these Ironman triathlons and all kinds of very painful event, and they all ended up, I'm not in the pain right now. Not so long ago I did a 10-kilometer ultra swim, and I'm talking to you right now, I'm not like swimming in pain in the Cancun ocean being sunburned to the second degree. So that's over, and I
Wow.
think people need to understand that as well, that yeah, it's everything is temporary.
Yeah, yeah. I swam 300 meters and I was in a lot of pain. So 10 kilometers, I
I
can't
couldn't
count.
swim 20 at first without being out of breath and being in total pain, So I guess another lesson there is do the work and adapt, and eventually you can get to these very long distances, these crazy distances. Tell us a bit more about Catipult, and with the AI frenzy right now, like, do you feel you're surfing a tsunami?
Yeah, yeah. The thing with technology in Silicon Valley is it always moves fast and when you least expect it, right? And so we saw that happen when the iPhone was introduced. It just wiped out every technology that was on there. One ad, I remember sitting there being like, "Oh my gosh, my company no longer is relevant." And that happens. And now AI, the same thing is happening. I think we're using it and it's going to actually have a lot of benefits, right? Right now, it creates a world-class business plan for people, but and the plan starts with themselves, which is important because I like where this conversation is going. Like you got to get through the pain, but you got to put yourself first and bend the business around you. And so one of the techniques we have is called the outcome statement that I can talk to you later about after I answer your question. So AI is definitely here to stay. I think it is slightly overhyped at this point. I don't think people have to worry about, oh my God, my job's disappearing anytime soon. Um, but it is going to be a powerful tool that's going to be used and continues to improve itself. Like ChatGPT and Bard, they're all excellent, but right now the understanding of what they're writing isn't quite there yet. So my son's a math major, and he told me, he said, look, they're all statistics and probability engines, so it can put words and sentences together that make sense based on probabilities, but it doesn't know what it's saying yet. When it gets to that point, then it'll be scary. But until now, but it's a really good tool, and we're deploying that for people as well.
Yeah, still somewhat of a bot, not capable of creating really. I mean, we could feed it new data, but can it create new data by itself is that the real question, just like a scientist in a lab. A scientist in a lab can create this new experiment from the idea that they first conceptualized, which is somewhat complex of on the how it got to their brains, the idea. When the AI will get these ideas and become creative, then I think the AGI tag will be relevant. And I don't think we're there. But what GPT proved us and showed us is near magic. It's really a magical product. Most aspects of it and how it was deployed and what the company's proven is quite impressive. I want to talk about Catapult itself, KPIs and so forth. I've done KPIs. I've not done KPIs also. I've really gone on and off, the left and right, the more creative side, the more structured side. There's advantages to both. But yeah, you will hear me use the word KPI or goals at least once a week. I set weekly goals with my team. I set monthly goals, yearly goals, quarterly goals, and so forth. And we do try to keep focus over them so that we can measure product progress and measure achievements in the company. So tell us a bit more about the software and the use of KPI there.
Yeah, so KPIs are fundamental as objective, quantifiable metrics, right? But in business, oftentimes with employees, they're viewed as punitive. If I don't hit this or I don't hit that, right, I get punished, right? But we look at KPIs as really the thing that puts together the Rockefeller habits very nicely. And those Rockefeller habits are everybody has to be aligned at the team, and at the end of the day, can quantifiably define that they had a good day or a bad day, right? And so when you create KPIs and you assign the action items that people are doing to forward that KPI, then everything's in aligned, right? And so so that's what Catapult does. It creates level 1 KPIs for CEOs. And these are often ones that business owners aren't aware of. Like your concentration of revenue to be world-class has to be below 20% in one revenue source. If it's higher than that, it's going to cost your valuation. So it'll generate these type of KPIs for the business owner and the action items to do to start meeting these. So business owners now have the focus they need to actually achieve world-class status, while at the same time, they can use that product to manage the KPIs in their organization. But what we believe is everything is forward-looking, because one of the things I mentioned earlier that I wanted to bring up is that we start with an outcome statement. And the outcome statement starts with the individual. It says the year is, and I am. So one example, Kurt Vandermeer, the CEO of Endangered Species Chocolate, came to us and he said, I've got a personal goal. I bought a cabin and I want to spend 4 weeks of vacation time in that cabin. We said, all right, that's the start of your business plan, right? The year is, and I am spending 4 weeks. What has to happen? So I have to upgrade the leadership team. So then he went and worked on the leadership team. We gave him 36 months to do it, 12 quarters, but in 18 months, he gave one call from the cabin. He said, I just spent my 4th week here without any calls from the executive team. So what happened was he had that cabin for a decade. And for a decade, lost 10 years of his daughter's lives there while they were there alone without dad, just with their mom, because he couldn't be there. Now he got the last 2 years back before they went off to college. He also grew 20% above plan. So when you put those things together and business owners see for the first time their own objectives as KPIs in line with the business, it just accelerates things very quickly.
I love this example. Got me thinking as well about my own parenthood. I plan to have children in less than 2 years from now. So yeah, the very good example. I really love it. I'm familiar with EOS. I have used EOS myself. We're talking about habits and adopting new habits. I call it the serotonin loop. To really hook something up in your brain. Seems like goals, it's been on and off. Maybe I haven't closed the serotonin loops with my goals. Sometimes I felt it was getting OCD-ish also, like constantly revising my goal even before I got to bed.
Right.
And then it took me 30 to 45 minutes to really like knock off, while nowadays I get to sleep under 5 minutes. So I'm always calculating these things. How do you recommend one should go with their goals? What's the equilibrium between results and OCD, aka too much obsession with goals?
Yeah. So with EOS, Catapult's been considered the next evolution of that, because it's a faster, better system that combines the rocks and the KPIs together and some other stuff. So very familiar with EOS. Well, our outcome statement is 3 years, right? And so here's what's happening when you get into those loops. The goals that are set are too confined, right? They're the time component isn't there, right? It's too much. So then you're constantly adjusting and saying, well, I didn't hit that goal today. I didn't hit that goal today. But what if you were able to have high level KPIs for your organization, right? And you take the stress off of hitting them tomorrow, right? Obviously, there's some supporting goals you want to have, 10 calls a day or whatever like that. But when you take the stress off and say, hey, I have to hit my concentration of revenue to be 20% or below, but I've got 12 quarters to do it, that goal never changes over 12 quarters, right? Even if you don't hit it, right, you're going to continue to monitor that. So there's certain KPIs that are fixed and immutable, and you're measuring your progress against them. Even if you hit them, you want to just keep them there and continue to measure and benchmark against it. So I do have a funny story about having a family and KPIs. If you mentioned that,
Go ahead.
another CEO, she said in her outcome statement, this was in front of a group of people. She said, "I want to get pregnant in 2 years." And so she wrote that the year is 2023 or whatever, and I'm pregnant with my first child. When we got to the KPI section, you break things down into personal KPIs first. The group around her said, well, you know what? If you want to do that, you need to at least have 2 date nights a week with your husband. Yeah, because she was working too hard. So that ended up being a really funny joke. But she put it down, 2 date nights with my husband. So, but it was another way to break those things down. So
Love it. Yeah, applied to its personal life. And yet, I mean, there's so many other areas like, for example, I want to age in a healthy manner. Well, yeah, that means doing physical activity and so forth. So KPIs are really good for that. Another of my problem though is that I had so many goals, I
oh yeah,
had goals in many areas of my life and I kind of lost track. In the end, my brain wasn't hooked at all at checking a list of 70 plus goals. I mean, it got deep in my psyche even up to this day, which might explain why I'm not that much hooked on goals nowadays. But yeah, how do you find focus, and why is focus important in that situation?
yeah, excellent. Well, rapid emotive behavior therapy, which is the serotonin loop that you're talking about, right? It focuses people on one thing at a time. So you get the loop going in a productive way, right? When we try to focus on 70 different things at once, it's impossible. What we do is we get burnout very quickly because we figure we can't do it. So you want to pick 1 or 2 things to just focus your attention on for either a month or a quarter or whatever that is for that business, right? So you might say, all right, revenue's lagging. Yes, there's 15 things we need to concentrate on, but on the Monday meetings that we're going to have, we're just going to have that one KPI up there and just continue to hammer that until that thing gets fixed. Because then that becomes that priority and that obsession with your brain. You're still getting other things done, but you want the obsessive, traits to be focused on that one thing. And then when that's achieved, then you bring up another thing. So we had one business owner have 1,240 KPIs that their CFO created. Guess how many were being used? 0, right? We narrowed it down to 10. Guess how many are used? 10, right? Across the entire business. So now they're using 10, which is a lot more than they were using when they had 1,240 KPIs. So it is about that management of focus.
Last, personal wellness. How do you make sure to recharge your battery adequately between your personal life and your business life?
Yeah, so Catapult system will recommend vacation times. It recommends book reading, and it recommends 4 hours of thinking time per week. And so that thinking time is usually time away from the office, and you can't bring a laptop or digital device, pen, paper, or Remarkable, something like that, so that you do have that break, because you have to refresh yourself, because all the science says if you don't do it, you're actually hurting your own productivity. So, right, that's why I shut it off during the weekend. You come back on Monday or Tuesday, just fired up with lots of ideas. If you work through the weekend, come back on Monday and Tuesday and you're dying. So,
Laws of diminishing returns, which is why even if you sleep 5 hours, you will be as productive, if not less productive, than the person that slept their whole 8, for example. And it's not a precise science. But Peter, thank you for coming on today. Where can people find out more about you in Catapult?
Catipult.ai, and that's spelled CATIPULT.ai.